You're listening to the Bear in Mind Podcast, episode 126.
A podcast that breaks it down so you can break the cycle for good. Now, your host, Tara Rama, but you can call her T.
I love it when episodes come together and they're close together and it intersects with what's actually happening in my life at the moment. And we're talking about boundaries ahead of time. And this is very much related to the cycle, the anger and guilt cycle, as well as the other episodes that I've talked about boundaries. It is all connected. And I'm going to talk about my experience with setting boundaries ahead of time and kind of what that looks like and what it used to look like when I thought I needed to set boundaries. And I would come and be like, I need to set boundaries. And usually those were boundaries set out of anger and frustration as opposed to setting boundaries from a place of love. So I'm going to bring this back to the cycle. So in episode 124, Hidden Anger, I talk about the anger and guilt cycle, that oftentimes that the hidden anger is there because we are stuck in guilt or shame. And this is usually when we're trying to avoid anger because we have learned that avoiding anger is the thing to do because maybe we learned that anger is bad. That's what I learned growing up, that anger is a bad emotion. Anger is not to be expressed within myself, only allowed in certain family members. Actually, that's what I learned. And so how I would handle anger is that I wouldn't allow the anger and I would push it aside and I would go straight into guilt. And then that guilt became looping into shame and a lot actually of self-loathing. So something happened today and I was able to catch it. It was still after the fact. And this is why I think even knowing things and looking at it in a very objective way, I don't mean by analyzing every aspect of everything, but looking at some things in hindsight will get you closer to seeing things in real time. And I did see some things in real time, but I didn't kind of piece together some of what was happening with me in a conversation with a friend. I didn't piece it together until after, put all the elements of the cycle together and what I was doing. So I felt shame after I saw a friend. And that doesn't feel good. And I was resisting it because I didn't want to feel shame, because shame is one of those emotions for me, how I experience it. It's a slower emotion. It's not a fast emotion. And it stays with me. And sometimes it stays for 3 days, sometimes longer. And so I really worked at allowing it through my body. And I had shame about something I had said to my friend. And if I were to actually say the words out loud, you'd be like, why do you have shame about that? And I did. And okay, I'm already in shame. I'm going to allow it to be processed. And after the fact, after I spent a couple days in it, I was able to see something that I think it was new for me because it was with a newer friend. And usually what happens is when I don't realize this pattern earlier in relationships, and then I look at my older relationships today, it was filled with a lot of resentment. And then I would need to set some sort of really extreme boundary. And so this was kind of eye-opening to have this happen with a newer friend. And so I felt shame. And I realized that a lot of times I go directly to shame and I don't even realize that there was some anger that happened. There was some irritation that happened in our conversation. And after the shame passed, I looked at what was happening and then I was able to see it, right? Because shame will block you, guilt will block you from accessing any wisdom about some of your other emotions that you were experiencing that could actually help you determine what kind of action you want to intentionally take. So I could see that I was irritated with a couple things that she had said. Now, it's my opinion. Other people would not be irritated, but I was irritated with a couple things she said. And I realized that I was trying to jump into this feeling because I was avoiding feeling irritated at a friend because I guess if I think about it, I don't really want to be this person that's irritated with friends. And I don't want to show up that way. So I would push it away. So when I looked at it and I found out some interesting things about how I should people, or how I think there's this, we use this term that I learned when I was getting certified for life coaching school. It's called the manual. We have a manual of how people should behave. So yes, I had this manual for friends shouldn't say that to another friend. So opening up myself to that, understanding that irritation, because at this time it wasn't full blown out anger. It was still what I would call irritation. And it's not something I want to address with somebody. I noticed it. And one of the things is it was something that I don't like, and I like my reasons for not liking this kind of behavior. And other people have it, and it's okay. But what this allowed me to do after I got through the shame and after I accepted my irritation, because I had a certain kind of manual and I accepted this, I was able to set boundaries ahead of time. And I'll start with what my boundaries used to look like. So I would be in shame. I would jump somehow to something. I would get there somehow. I would find a way to shame to avoid anger. Even if the thing that I said was like, what's the big deal? Why do you feel ashamed about that? I would find a way. That was my go-to emotion to avoid anger. But that anger would still be there. It would go unrecognized. It would be unconscious. So it's unconscious. I can't control it. I can't do anything about it. I don't have any knowledge of why I feel angry. What is it telling me about what kind of relationships I want to have? I didn't get any of that. So that irritation would build and build and build up until the point it was becoming resentment. And then it was leading to me keeping score with my friends, which then, let me tell you, I did not show up as a lovely friend at this point in our relationship. And then I was so exhausted because what I was doing is I was just resisting, avoiding feeling. I was avoiding the anger, but avoiding. It wasn't necessarily true resistance, but avoiding. And then it builds to the point where I'm so exhausted. And then here comes the extreme boundary where I then wouldn't talk to the person. I would avoid the person because I thought, okay, if I avoid the person, that's the solution. So the boundary is taken from a place of resentment. It's taken from a place of exhaustion. And setting boundaries from that emotion usually ends up setting boundaries that are so extreme where now it's almost like you're isolating yourself. It's almost like you can't be around certain people that irritate you. And people will irritate you. Even your best friend will irritate you from time to time because we're all human. We all have different emotions. We might be in a bad mood, might not be feeling well, and something somebody does irritates you. We might be hungry. All of those things play into it. So it's fair to say that over the course of a relationship, you're going to feel irritated a lot, even the best of relationships. But now I had irritation and I allowed it and it passed through and I'm no longer irritated, my friend. And I realized that I still wanted to set a boundary. And the simple boundary around it was my time. It wasn't that I wasn't going to see her or not do things with her or run away from her if I saw her at a social event, at a party or anything like that. It was around my time that I didn't want to focus so much of my energy on pursuing developing the friendship at a deeper level. It doesn't mean that I don't want it to be at a deeper level, but in this moment, I was going to enjoy the new friendship as it was. And so it was simply just around my attention, my focus, maybe not reaching out every time I wanted to get together, that kind of feeling like, I kind of had that more of that urge when I was feeling shame. Like I need to reach out because I don't want her to think that I'm an awful person. All of those things that you kind of want to do in the space when you're coming from a negative emotion. But now it was subtle. It wasn't a boundary that anyone would even notice. I am fairly confident it's a boundary that she didn't even notice. Because guess what? I saw her again and it was okay. I saw her at a bigger gathering and I was so happy to see her, but I had given myself that boundary around my time, my attention, and my focus that when I did see her, I was like, wow, she's so great. She's such a fantastic person. I'm so happy to see her. And that was a boundary set from love. It was a set from love for myself and for her. Because again, nobody, my partner, nobody even knew that I set this boundary. It was nothing visible. It was nothing I had to go out and shout it from the rooftops that, hey, this is my boundary. It was just simply where my time and my focus was going to go around my social life. And when I did this, I was able to appreciate her so much more. I was able to not feel resentment. I was able to not keep score. I had processed all that stuff. So when we were interacting, it was amazing. I had fun. And before that wouldn't happen, it would just build the irritation. Then there'd be another irritation, and I'd be looking out for everything that maybe could possibly irritate me within her behaviors. So from that standpoint, just setting a little bit of boundaries ahead of time help me understand myself, help me understand what I want in relationships and how I can show up in relationships so that they can develop into amazing relationships, that I can be present for them and set appropriate boundaries in my relationships so that I can have those amazing relationships, because that's where I think boundaries is essential to actually having the relationships that you want in your life. With anybody, with your kids, with your partner, with friendships, acquaintances, colleagues, all of it. That's all I have for you this week. I'll check back with you next.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.